Is Lenoris Sellers going to play on Saturday night? Well, quite frankly, I hope he does, and I'll explain why on this live edition of Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball, as I sort of hem and haw here for a second, trying to figure out, wait a second, what happened to my PTI style graphic here? You see, this is the dangers of doing a live edition of Locked On Mizzou. But I figured it out. Live production. If it happened, you know what? It's not a mistake. When it goes live, it was meant to happen, baby. Thank you, Bruce Pritchard, for that particular note. And we got a ton to talk about, not just Lenoris Sellers, but hey, how about Ahmad Hardy? Is he maybe the best running back in the entire country? Plus, I think there's a wrinkle Missouri should and maybe will use offensively against South Carolina that I think will help them quite a bit. Real quickly here, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today, of course, Google Play or the iOS App Store for you there. So again, let's talk some Lenoris Sellers here, and all indications are right now he's probably going to play in this ball game. And I have my own thoughts here to add on what I think is happening with Sellers here behind the scenes in just a little bit. But we saw Pete Thamel there, ESPN.com. It seems like everybody, at least in the SEC, all these coaches funnel the big news through old Petey Thamel these days. Well, he says there's optimism around the status of South Carolina quarterback Lenoris Sellers for the game at Missouri on Saturday per ESPN sources. He's been in practice, and there's positive signs for his availability. Now, we could parse some of these words here for sure and say, well, he's been in practice. How much is he actually practicing? I think when you funnel something like this to Pete Thamel, I think that's generally not a lie. I don't think, again, all these coaches who want to funnel information through him, I don't think they're just going to straight up lie to him whatsoever. So here's my speculation here. I assume that Lenoris Sellers either suffered a concussion on Saturday or South Carolina and their training staff strongly suspected it. So they ruled him out for the rest of that Vanderbilt game. But since then, he's had no real post-concussion symptoms, I would say. Because if he did, I don't think, number one, they'd be shipping this information over to ESPN and Pete Thamel, them being the Gamecocks, of course. But I just also think there would be more of an actual concussion protocol. I don't think he would necessarily actually be practicing here. Again, this is all my speculation here. But regardless, officially, Sellers is listed as questionable, and there is still always a chance that these types of symptoms could rear their ugly head after a few days or so. So ultimately, this is probably still a game-time decision for Sellers and South Carolina. But I will say this, even with the trend seeming like Sellers is going to play, well, the spread went down to 9.5 at one point, now settling at around 10.5 at the moment at FanDuel Sportsbook. That tells me that, well, everybody still expects Missouri to be the better team here, at least on paper, with or without Sellers. So I will say there is a bit of a trap almost element here for Missouri with South Carolina obviously taking a tough loss last week. They're going to be really motivated to come back and win this game, as they always are, but I think even more so coming off a tough loss at home in Williams-Brice Stadium against the Vanderbilt Commodores. That just seems like a tough one for me to imagine. So, here's the thing with Missouri and South Carolina. That 10.5 points is pretty significant. It's based all on the projections, I would say, so far. I'm not comfortable saying that Missouri is going to cover that spread, even though they've covered all three of them so far this season. If Missouri does cover that spread, if they do take it to South Carolina, well, that just means Missouri is looking even more like a big-time playoff contender here, if not a dark horse contender for the whole league right now in the Southeastern Conference. Again, you got to beat South Carolina or all of that talk goes away. And for anybody who thinks this is an automatic victory for Missouri, that is not my mentality whatsoever. Just so we are clear here, with or without Lenoris Sellers. By the way, I know Luke Doty didn't look great coming off the bench, to say the least, against Vanderbilt, but a guy with a ton of experience, his sixth year of college football. As Eli Drinkwitz said, the offense really doesn't change that much with Doty in the lineup, if indeed it comes to that point. Bottom line, I really hope that Lenoris Sellers plays on a couple of different levels. First of all, on a human level, I always root for just good football and the best players to be out there and, to beat teams at full strength. Obviously, Missouri's going to be the favorite here regardless. So if the Tigers take care of business, well, it's going to look a lot better for said college football playoff resume, among other things, if Missouri looks impressive in this ball game, especially with Sellers at quarterback. It's not that hard to think back to the 2023 Cotton Bowl, a tremendous victory for Missouri on every level, except that some people like to point out, of course, that, well, hey, Ohio State didn't have their starting quarterback, as if them starting a former number one high school recruit overall in the entire country means that the game suddenly doesn't count. It's weird how I think if Missouri would have had a quarterback injured in that game, when the underdog gets a player injured, well, that's just supposed to happen, I suppose. But when a favorite gets a quarterback or a prominent player injured, suddenly the game doesn't count. So whether you agree with that assessment or not, I don't really want to hear it from the nation writ large when it comes to, that win doesn't really matter. Are we sure Missouri's for real? Because, Lenoris Sellers didn't play. Also, hey, how about a revenge factor, too? Lenoris Sellers kind of ripped out my heart last season at the end of that ball game. I was in Willie B. I'm not really down with that nickname, by the way. I was at Williams-Brice Stadium last year in Columbia, South Carolina. Pretty doggone good seats, by the way, especially to see that beautiful Brady Cook dime, one-handed catch to Luther Burden that put Missouri ahead. But right after that, the Gamecocks, led by Lenoris Sellers, obviously marched the Gamecocks 75 yards for a pretty easy drive, ultimately, unfortunately. So, yes, a revenge factor. I'm definitely factoring that in as well. And you know what? Coming up, let's talk about Ahmad Hardy a little bit more. And by the way, what can maybe Missouri do to change up the offense a little bit and catch the Gamecocks by surprise? I think there may be some element here that the Tigers didn't even show to Kansas that I think that they can go to here in a little bit. But you know what? First, let's talk about Mazda, because Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, and Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. And from footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same energy and intention to how we craft every model. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. And like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. It is Mazda. Move and be moved. And also DoorDash. And it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on who delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. Well, obviously, Ahmad Hardy, Marquise Davis, really Jamal Roberts, the entire Missouri running back crew has just been incredible so far this season. And just like those young fellas, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. And thanks again for joining me on this live edition of Locked On Mizzou. Feel free, if you're watching on YouTube, to leave some comments, and I'll get to them here as the show goes along. And also, by the way, apologies to all you everydayers out there for missing yesterday's show. Had something lined up with Locked On Gamecocks Chris Marler. Long story short, well, didn't quite work out. We're scheduled to do it here this afternoon. We'll run that one on Friday, so no worries here. But again, apologies. I'll make it up with my usual 5 days a week by going with a Saturday post-game show for you of Missouri and South Carolina. But one thing that I couldn't help but notice recently, hey, the nation's certainly starting to take notice of Ahmad Hardy. Still no odds on the Heisman Trophy for Ahmad Hardy, but maybe I was looking at that the wrong way, because Ahmad Hardy before the season to win the Doak Walker Award was 28-1. Not an incredible long shot by any stretch of the imagination, but he's now the favorite, by the way, at 4-1, which makes a lot of sense. Not only are Hardy's total numbers really impressive, he's your nation's leading rusher, but all your advanced stats, if you will, the more detailed stuff, the yards after contact, the broken tackles, all of that stuff just tells you, well, exactly who Ahmad Hardy is as a player. And just your eyeballs seem to tell you that he tends to not only be an explosive player, but he gets what's there when the blocking isn't all that great, by the way, either. And speaking of guys who were great long shots for the Doak Walker Award, again, I just said Ahmad Hardy went from 28-1 to now the favorite at 4-1. Well, would you believe Kewan Lacy isn't too far behind at 8-1 at this point? Yes, the former Missouri Tiger looking very impressive at Ole Miss. Not a huge surprise to me, I have to say. Really the only thing last year that held Lacy back probably from more action in the middle and early parts of the season was a couple of early fumbles. But Lacy, when he touched the ball, he always looked impressive. So not exactly a huge shock there, in my opinion. But speaking of Ahmad Hardy, one of the trends that I couldn't help but notice here early in the season, when you look at the snap counts, well, helpfully, by the way, thanks to Power Mizzou for breaking down the snap counts into run versus pass when each player is in the game. And when Hardy's in the ball game, well, 3-1, 4-1, that type of deal, it's been a run so far. And that could be a little bit misleading. Of course, Missouri has been crushing 2 out of its 3 opponents so far this season, number 1. But number 2, I do wonder if maybe Missouri can use this particular trend and pattern to their advantage. Because, of course, if I have access to this data, as all of you do now as well, obviously South Carolina and Missouri's remaining opponents do as well. One thing I think Missouri can do more of against South Carolina to take advantage of that particular trend, and just how good Ahmad Hardy and the rest of that Missouri rushing attack have been, of course, how about a little bit more play action this week? Not only is play action, especially on, 1st and 10, 2nd and 5, when it's in an advantageous position for the offense, it really is kind of a cheat code, because, man, it's just so difficult as a linebacker, as a safety who's playing near in the box, that type of deal, to know, wait, do I need to play the pass? Do I need to play the run against tight ends and running backs, for example, who are running toward me? Do I need to know to take on this block, or do I need to guard them in the passing game? Those type of things. And I just think Missouri not only can take is a good play action team with design, what Kirby Moore does, I think Bo Prabula is a good play action quarterback as well. At least that's what he's shown so far to me. He looks really comfortable getting under center, putting his back to the play for a second, and then whipping his head around. And when he needs to, by the way, being on the move. I think that's the part that Bo's really comfortable with, that bootleg type action where your quarterback can use his legs, almost has a run pass type option, and can also buy time by continuing to roll out. Just seems to me that Prebula is really comfortable with those types of plays, and it just shows you that not only is Prebula a talented guy, but I think he fits very well into this Kirby Moore, Eli Drinkwitz scheme and what they're trying to do for a whole bunch of different reasons. That being among them, also just his accuracy on short passes. And certainly, I think this offense, like really any offense, works a lot better when you've got a mobile quarterback as well. And by the way, I did give Eli Drinkwitz a little bit of a gentle, challenge, just like he challenged the fans before Missouri did get its 16th consecutive sellout, by the way. And that's really the headline here. Missouri sells out at home once again. And, I did say, hey, Eli, maybe be a little nicer to your fans, especially when it's going to inevitably sell out anyway. But regardless, Eli did have a good point that surprised me recently when he said, he pointed out that this Gamecock game, that's an SEC night game, and that the Tigers have, quote, only had 3 since 2011, while others have had way more than that. And when he initially said that, I have to say I was kind of shocked. I assumed he was correct. Why would he say? I assumed that somebody handed him that information, number one. But I have to say I was kind of shocked. I was going, really? 3 night games? I go to all these things. And in my mind, for example, hey, remember when Connor Bazelak threw the 2-point conversion to Daniel Parker Jr. for the win? Missouri could have settled for overtime with the point after touchdown, but instead went for 2. It paid off. I just remember, hey, that was at night, right? Fireworks went off and all that stuff. And indeed it was, but here's the thing. That game started during the day, and like a lot of these games, especially late fall, that kick off at about 2:30 or so, obviously they're going to end at night. So in my mind, I was going, okay, I need to shuffle this out a little bit. Well, fortunately, Chris Goodwin, the new guy over at Power Mizzou, did it for me. So thank you, Chris. And indeed, Eli Drinkwitz was correct, especially you define it as a game that kicks off at 6 o'clock or later. Then indeed, he's right. That's really surprising to me that there have only been 3 such cases. So this is usually a great rivalry. By the way, I remember back in 2013, a really exciting night game between Missouri and South Carolina. Hopefully this one goes the other way for the Tigers. That is for darn sure. But you know what? Got more to talk about this Missouri game. Also some exciting news for Brady Cook this weekend, potentially on the NFL field. Lots of stuff to still get to here on Locked On Mizzou. But first, let me tell you, most people can't even name all their financial accounts or what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in. We're talking a complete financial center, and Monarch Money is built for people with busy lives. And that's basically all of us at this point. If you're married and you have kids, you're busy. That's just all there is to it. So Monarch is doing all of the heavy lifting for you. You can identify that you aren't saving as much as you thought. For example, you may have redundancies in subscriptions. Monarch Money is going to be your tool to let you stop letting financial opportunity slip through the cracks. So use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code Locked On College. Ah, yes, my old friend Jason Jennings in the comments here. Very excited for a live read, and indeed a live read here on Locked On Mizzou. This is a special treat for all you everydayers who are going, where the heck was John yesterday? Well, damn it, I'm here right now taking all of your questions live, but not all that many questions right now. Come on, just start firing them at me. What are we doing here? Well, Gregory says, I did see that Lenoris Sellers was at practice. Now, what that means, I don't know, but even if he does, I feel good because, like you said the other day, they didn't look great with him. And I think that's ultimately my point. I'm glad Gregory agrees with me here because Missouri should want the best competition right now, especially if you're a 10.5-point favorite, assuming Sellers plays. Let's bring him out there. Again, let's also be good human beings and hope he plays. And yes, let's be bad human beings and wish for that sweet revenge as well. I know Jason Jennings, who was with me at that ball game last year in Columbia, South Carolina, agrees wholeheartedly with that. By the way, Eli Drinkwitz this week on Tiger Talk said that he believes that former Mizzou quarterback Brady Cook is going to be activated off the Jets practice squad this week to their active roster. Well, maybe that means Justin Fields isn't playing. I'm not sure. I know he left last week, so I'll be honest, I haven't kept up with the Jets and their injury report, but that's really exciting news, especially, again, just on a personal level. I know Brady Cook's father a tiny bit, by the way. I'm just excited for him, just imagining, my goodness, having a child actually being active as a quarterback in the National Football League. Amazing. That just puts a smile on my face. It truly does. So excited for all of that. And by the way, Vakari Swain, did you guys think I went too far? Did I go too far by saying Missouri should kick it away from him every time? I really think with how South Carolina's offense has looked so far, outside of really their two opening drives and their two most important games anyway, Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech, I just think Missouri has got to be careful on special teams, especially when, well, Missouri's special teams have been a bit of a sore thumb, I think, the past couple seasons. The offense has been good. The defense has been good. The offense fell back a little bit last year. Now it looks like it's coming back in spades, but the Missouri special teams, still a little bit shaky so far, I would say. That's one, I would think, apparent weakness, though I will say Kevin Coleman looking great as a punt returner, looking like the veteran and the shifty player that he is back there, sure-handed, all that good stuff. Speaking of somebody I trust to catch the ball and receive it in traffic, I think Kevin Coleman is that guy. Now, on the other hand, the kickoff returns, boy, they've left a lot to be desired so far, in my opinion. As far as punt coverage, kickoff coverage, I'd say it's been fine so far again, but over the last couple seasons, it's left something to be desired. I just think if Missouri is going to, if you're going to consider this an upset, which obviously my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook do, I think if you're going to consider this an upset, one of the ways the Gamecocks can pull it, and one of the ways they consistently do pull these kinds of close games out, is in the kicking game, is in special teams. That's something that Shane Beamer does consistently well with his program. Obviously, that's something that he learned from his father, Frank Beamer, during his time at Virginia Tech. Finally, the Soccer says, what kind of a nickname, what kind of a handle is that for a football podcast? But seriously, the Soccer says if Mizzou can start 6-0, I believe we will really start to get national recognition. Well, 6-0 would include an Alabama victory, right? So, yeah, no doubt about that. I got to be honest, I think if Missouri beats South Carolina this week and does it in relatively impressive fashion, I kind of think that's all it's going to take. A night game, the SEC, ESPN. There's going to be a lot of people who at least have that game on a spare TV or have it on at the bar when they're out and about, that type of deal. So that's what I'm thinking. But yeah, 6-0, I think there's no doubt about it. Then if Missouri starts 6-0, they're probably a top 10 team at that point. I think Mizzou, Robert says, I think Mizzou will win whether Sellers plays or not. Both our offense and defense are solid. Ahmad Hardy is a stud. Bo Prabula's accuracy on pass plays has been awesome. Coleman, Norfleet, Johnson, thumbs up. You know what? I'll give you 2 thumbs up for that comment, Robert. And you know what? Hopefully this has been a thumbs up podcast for you. You know what? I just wanted to give you a live one since I obviously failed yesterday miserably on actually getting one out on a Wednesday. This is your team every day, right? That is the thing. Well, again, I'll make it up for you on Saturday. Post game here, ASAP for Mizzou and South Carolina. Again, I am going to be there live at the game, so getting out of the parking lot quickly can be a bit of a challenge. So again, ASAP being the operative 4 letters there. By the way, another big moment for Locked On. College football fans, you got to check out Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation with AP, 2-time Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, and a whole bunch of Locked On experts, a college football preview that only we can do. Catch Locked On College Football's College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. And by the way, thanks for joining me, as always, right here on Locked On Mizzou.